Welcome to Back to the Father, a show about the journey of life focused on our final end, which is God Himself, our loving Father. And now, here's your host, Dave Palmer.
And welcome, everybody, to Back to the Father. It is Friday, 2 o'clock Central Time, and this is a new time and kind of a new way of delivering this program to you. It's all social media, so we are not on the radio, but we are on social media, so welcome. Today is May 7th, 2021, the Friday of the 5th week of Easter, so happy Easter to you, and I see that I'm having a really bad hair day there. So, see, you count on people in studio to tell you these kind of things, you know. Maybe I need to put my hat on.
We're all very self-absorbed.
Because nobody was paying attention to my bad hair day. So, anyways, welcome, and you'll see that we all have hats on. We got about 5 people watching us, and so we are delighted that you are here. This is a program that is exclusively focused on the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas and the Summa Theologia. So let me introduce everybody. My name is Dave Palmer, host of the program. Cecil Anderson is over there. How you doing, Cecil?
Hi, I'm doing well.
Yeah, we got a nice little camera set up there. And then Jonathan von Weber-Hansberg, who up until now has mostly been behind the scenes. You hear his voice every now and then, but you don't see him. So now you get to see Cowboy Jonathan there. All right. Yeah. So, Jonathan, good to have you with us. Glad you're part of the show. And Diane Xavier is running the board. I don't think she's on camera, so you don't see her, but she does have
audience.
a hat on. We always like to comment at the beginning about Cecil's hat. And as you can see, it's kind of contagious.
It is.
And we're all wearing hats. I think I'm going to take mine off at some point, even though I'm having a really bad hair day, but I'm going to take mine off. Okay. So we've done the hat thing. So everybody seems to think you're wearing a funeral hat.
Yes,
are you trying to tell us something or what?
No,
what are you getting at?
I wasn't intending I should have worn it last week when we were talking about, heaven and, dying.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit more relevant. I don't even know what this hat is. It might be a funeral hat for all I know. I found it in my closet, and the first thing Diane said was like, "Is that a funeral hat?"
Yeah, first thing I said too, right?
And I was like, "Oh dear, oh dear." By the way, I just want to give a shout out. I asked everyone on social media where they're watching from, and we got Buddy from Houston, Texas is watching.
Buddy in Houston, all right. Which reminds me, Buddy in Houston reminds me of the fact that today I've got a special incentive. Anybody like Buddy who has already commented on our social media platforms, because that's all we are. We're not on the radio today. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, okay? So it's kind of funny because I'm telling you where we are, but if you hear my voice, you're already there. So there's no reason to promote it because you're there. And you don't have to tell. Tell your friends about it. So I'm not going to talk about how you get on to our social media sites because you're already there. But you see this? I'm holding it up. And the advantage of only being on social media is that I don't have to explain to the radio people what I'm doing because you can see it. But I have the DVD of Fatima, and we gave some of those away on some of our shows recently. Well, thanks to Carmel Communications, I have 10 passes for 10 people who are watching right now to go see the Fatima movie, but you got to go to an AMC theater. And unfortunately, I only have tickets for Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. So if you're in San Antonio or Midland or one of these other places, unless you want to drive to Dallas or Houston, I don't have any for you. I'm sorry. That's Carmel's call. These is just where. So if you want to go to an AMC theater and see Fatima, it's real simple. All I do is email you this. You print it off. You show up at the theater. It's got to be like Monday the 10th through Friday. It's next week. Okay, anytime next week you want to go. So if you're in Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston, and you're watching me, do one of two things. Either email me, okay, davepalmer@grnonline.com, or you can call us up here at the studio, talk to Diane Xavier, give her your phone number and email address, and I'll send you one of these, Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston, and go see actually at the theater, okay, the movie Fatima, beginning next Monday, and I think you got about 5 days or so to go see it, all right? Dave Palmer at grnonline.com, or call and talk to Diane, 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. Anybody other than Buddy in Houston comment so far?
Yes, we have Celeste in Louisville. She's having some internet issues, I think, on her end, so she's having trouble, but she's trying to tune in as well.
All right. So, again, new format, but it's kind of nice because, as I mentioned the last couple of weeks, the reason we're doing this is that it was decided that the Summa being kind of deep, you may have noticed. And, it's a book. Yeah, it's not a movie or anything like that. Sometimes seeing it on the screen, seeing images, seeing pictures that relate to the Summa, seeing the actual text that we show is advantageous rather than just hearing it on the radio, okay? So anyways, so this is the team, and we're glad you're joining. It's very interactive. We want you to leave comments, and you are actually able to call and be on the air, even though it's not a radio thing. If you want to call in and we can hear your voice, that would be awesome as well. 877-757-9424. 877-757-9424. Okay, so before we get moving, anything introductory-wise you guys want to talk about? Hats or... we start light and then we get really heavy.
Yeah, we do. Well,
okay?
maybe we should tell people a little bit about how they can stay connected with us on this program.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout the week. Since we are now a social media show, we do want to, it's easy to like 2 o'clock come and go and you go, oh no, I missed the show. And we do want it to be interactive, so we want you there. You can always rewatch it later, but we like it if you all are here, so you can ask questions as it happens. So we do have an email list that's gonna, start really next week, but you'll get on the list if you want to be added to it. You just send us your email. You can email Dave Palmer at grnonline.com and say, hey, add me to the Back to the Father email list, and we might have some exclusive content thrown in there, and maybe in particular you're going to get a pretty cool
video.
welcome video that we've been working on all morning.
Yeah, let's spend a little time talking about this video because it's exclusive to people who are on the email list, and we've spent some time on it today. Sissel has a degree in videography. She's very talented, very clever. All of us are in it. In fact, even Diane, who you can't see right now, Diane is in it. And should I give you a little hint about what it is? It's not just like one shot, me behind a desk talking about it and welcoming you. It's actually an edited video, probably going to be, 3-4 minutes long?
Yeah, something like that.
And you get, it's kind of funny. And if you want to get it, and it's exclusive to our email list, okay, email me, davepalmer@grnonline.com. And it does play on the ongoing theme of Jonathan being a little bit of a heretic. Do you want to explain how you got that reputation?
Well, I just sort of started playing devil's advocate, and then we did that first video where I was just a full-blown heretic.
Yeah, it was just full-blown, went all the way. So unfortunately,
Yeah.
he's been typecast from now on.
Yeah.
That's right.
But yeah.
All right. So email me, get in the list. And we got a few people that responded last week. We apologize because we promised you last week that you get an email by today, and that didn't happen. But can we promise them by Tuesday of next week they're going to get the video? Okay, Tuesday of next week, you're going to get the video. I think you'll find it entertaining and interesting. All right. It looks like Diane is getting some calls already. So if you want to be a part of the show, call us 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. And again, if you're in Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston, you want to go see the Fatima movie next week, actually at the theater, you and a guest, email me or call in, and we'd be happy to give you one of those. All right, so that is it. The topic today, which we highlighted last week, is called What Were Adam and Eve Like Before the Fall, and Why Should We Care? All right, what were Adam and Eve like before the fall, and why should we care? Just a little bit of a summary about why we call it Back to the Father. Let me put you guys in the spot, okay? You've been listening now for a few months, all right? Why Jonathan von Weber-Hansberg? Why do we call it Back to the Father? Do you remember?
Because the show is meant to direct us back to God, who is our final end.
Yeah, very good. The Summa, that's what the Summa is about, and therefore that's what the show is about as well. And so also just to highlight a few of the topics that we've talked about on shows already, because we had quite a number of shows so far. The proofs for God's existence, the attributes of God, the angels, the most blessed Trinity. We talked about hell. That was a real uplifting show, wasn't it?
That was when I should have worn the funeral hat.
I know. Gosh, the timing is everything, sister, with your hats.
I
Now, come on. We also had a pretty interesting show on heaven. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of comments. I think the two shows that probably got the most feedback were the one on the angels and also the one on heaven. Okay, kind of, angelic, kind of happy themes. So today we talk about what were Adam and Eve like before the fall. And I am going to put you guys on the spot. Not that, just what do you think? First thing that comes to your mind, Diane can always jump on as well, and we do want the questions to come in via phone, 877-757-9424, and also, of course, comment on social media as well. If you're watching us on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, we'd love to have your thoughts and comments as well. So what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about, what were Adam and Eve like before the fall, before they ate the apple, before they sinned, and then original sin and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think it's actually quite important. And I think very few people really spend much time thinking
I don't
about
think many
this.
people think about it
Yeah.
at all.
So why does it matter? Why does it apply to us in 21st century America, living and in the state of kind of wounded nature that came from the fall? So, anything come to mind, Jonathan?
Well,
And Jonathan doesn't always talk heresy. Sometimes he has. He's very bright,
Yeah.
right?
Occasionally, you can
Yeah.
listen to what he says.
Well, I'm totally not just sort of saying what you said last time, but I believe they had a nearly angelic nature, didn't they? Where they knew everything and.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
What he said. You know?
Yeah, so you got to understand if they have a nearly angelic nature, you have to understand what is angelic nature.
Right.
And that has to do with the fact that the angels don't learn things. They don't, their minds aren't discursive. They don't kind of, learn things little by little, but everything is kind of infused into them at the same time. I thought you guys were going to point out something that most people are aware of when it comes to Adam and Eve, that they wouldn't die. Did you guys remember
they were
that?
immortal.
Yeah,
Yes.
they were immortal. So that's what
right.
I think most people think of. It's like, oh, yeah, Adam and Eve, they're immortal. They're not going to die. Okay, so
That
that's
must not be most people, because the thing I think about before the fall is, did wasps sting us before the fall? And were cockroaches as gross as they are now? Those sort of things. Or I guess there's no fear of cockroaches?
Yeah, that actually is going to play into
Oh,
it.
is it? Yay.
Yeah, so okay, that is a good lead. Thomas didn't talk about cockroaches, but let me go to the PowerPoint, and as you follow along, and you're going to see on the PowerPoint that there's a picture of a tulip, a dog, and a lady. Okay, now the reason I put these up there, why is that so funny?
I'm just trying to figure out what they have in common.
No, it's not what they all have nature. They're all alive.
Okay.
They all have being. They all have essences. But the key here is that our nature is different than a dog or a tulip, right? And there's something unique about us. And we are living as fallen creatures with original sin until, of course, baptism. And then even after baptism, we have concupiscence and we have a fallen nature, okay? So how does that differ from what Adam and Eve had before the fall? Okay, so the first question we're going to talk about is whether in the state of innocence, man would have been immortal. Now, realize that when we talk about man, we mean man and woman. That's what Thomas means. He's not talking only about men in that sense, but he's talking about men and women, okay? And I want to get your thoughts and comments. The more interactive this is with you watching on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, the better it's going to be. So we've already established that, yes, in fact, in the state of innocence, man would have been immortal. But why would that have been the case? What do you think? Why would he not have died?
Well,
Sorry.
we're not fallen yet, so there's no
There's no separation from God.
Exactly,
They were
yeah.
in communion
there's
with
nothing
God.
beyond death at
Right.
that point because you're already there.
All right. And by the way, other ways of describing the state of original innocence, the primitive state, state of original justice, rectitude, order. Okay, so here's what Thomas says. Okay, see if this makes sense to you. A thing may be incorruptible in three ways. First, on the part of matter, that is to say, either because it possesses no matter like an angel. So an angel is immortal, all right? They're created, and unless God just decides to annihilate them, they're never going to die because they don't have bodies, right? And you can't kind of like wipe out a spirit. Or because it possesses matter that is in potentiality to one form only, like the heavenly bodies. Such things these are incorruptible by their very nature. So angels are incorruptible by their very nature. Second, a thing is incorruptible in its form inasmuch as being by nature corruptible, yet it has an inherent disposition which preserves it wholly from corruption, and this is called incorruptibility of glory. Okay? You guys with me? Am I losing you?
I think so. I think so.
I think I'm losing you, or you think you're with me?
No comment.
Okay, so incorruptibility would mean you can't die. Okay, so you
Gotcha.
understand the angels can't die, right?
Right,
Okay,
right.
so
No,
the
got
angels
that.
can't die. But what about us? Okay, so third, a thing may be incorruptible. Okay, if you read along here on the screen, on the part of its efficient cause. In this sense, man was incorruptible and immortal in the state of innocence. For as Augustine says, God made man immortal as long as he did not sin, so that he might achieve for himself life or death. For man's body was indissoluble, not by reason of any intrinsic vigor or immortality, but by reason of a supernatural force given by God to the soul, whereby it was enabled to preserve the body from all corruption, so long as it retained itself subject to God. All right. So what is what it is that this was a conditional type of supernatural grace that was given to Adam and Eve in the beginning, but it was conditional. It wasn't like the angels where they were incorruptible, but basically he said, okay, I'm going to give you this immortality if you don't sin, right? If you're obedient, right?
We might have messed that one up.
Yeah, they messed it up, right? So,
And Buddy commented on Facebook that death was the consequence of sin. There was no death until sin. Correct?
yeah, okay, good, Buddy. And Buddy's new. We haven't ever heard from
Yeah,
him
I don't
before,
think
have
we've
we?
had him on our show
Okay,
before, no.
interesting. So, all right, Buddy. Well, thank you so. It's funny. I call my son Buddy, and so of course you always think of Buddy the Elf from the Elf Show, but Buddy's probably going to leave us now that I've made that comparison. Okay, so
Dang.
all right, so what we've established so far is that they were incorruptible, they were immortal, they weren't going to die as long as they don't sin. Okay, but as Sissel has pointed out, they did sin. Okay. So now the next thing we say was the first man created in grace. All right, so what does that mean? Okay, was the first man created in grace? Now this is really interesting, okay? I have a picture of creation, the Michelangelo image there, where God, touches Adam and creates him. And we already have established that there was something special, some supernatural gift that God gave to Adam, right? So what was that? And do we have it today? Have we lost it? What is the comparison between us and what Adam and Eve had? What do you think? Who was it that was created in grace? I mean, who was it that said, "Hail Mary, full of grace"? So what happened when Mary? That wasn't that it happened at that moment, but Mary was created in grace, right? Free of original sin, and back in conception, all that. That's how it pertains, right? All right. So was man created in grace? Some say that man was not created in grace, but that it was bestowed on him subsequently before sin, and many authorities of the saints declare that man possessed grace in the state of innocence, okay? But the very rectitude of the primitive state, okay, this is Adam and Eve, wherewith man was endowed by God, seems to require that, and others say that he was created in grace. According to Ecclesiastes 7, God made man right. For this rectitude consisted in his reason being subject to God, the lower powers to reason, and the body to the soul. And the first subjection was the cause of both the second and the third. Okay. What does that mean? All right. And so every now and then you can bring us back on camera. Or who's doing that? Is that you?
That's me, yeah.
Oh, okay. You can bring us on camera so everybody can see Sissel's hat and think of the
yes.
funeral, okay?
And my perplexed
All
face.
right. So so you're seeing what's on the screen, and what does that mean? Okay, if you guys are watching at home, what does it mean? What's he getting at here? What was unique about Adam and Eve before the fall? We're only talking about before the fall, and what was all that was lost after the fall and the state that we're living in now, even after we were baptized? Okay, does that mean anything? Does it make sense? Is it total like that? I don't even know what you're saying. He said the reason was subject to God, the lower powers to reason, and the body to the soul. All right? It's total integrity. It means that whatever we want the body to do, it'll do. Whatever God, we are in union with God. Our body, our reason is in union with our body. So there's like total integrity. Okay, so they had a state of integrity where they weren't going to sin, at least not of the flesh. Okay, they wouldn't eat too much pizza, and they wouldn't get drunk, and they wouldn't oversleep, and I don't even think they would need to sleep. But there was absolute integrity in every way. So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so. I'm trying to think of like an example of what I mean. So if they have what their mind tells that their body can do, are we talking about things that like would take us time and practice to do, or like if they wanted to do a flip, would they be able to do a flip? Whereas if we try to do a flip, we'll probably fall on our face the first 5 times.
So would they like be perfect gymnasts?
Well,
is that
that's
what you mean?
Like, 'cause
or
you're
what do
saying
you mean
that
by a
they
flip?
had complete, like perfect. Yeah, would they be able to like just randomly pull out a backflip? Because I'm sorry, this is really random.
So
but
so
I'm
far
just
you
trying
bring
to.
up cockroaches, and
Hello, I'm just
backflips.
here to
Okay.
derail the
No,
conversation.
that's
I'm
interesting.
just trying to bring it up to
interesting.
something I might relate
So
to.
if they wanted to do a backflip, they could just do it.
Well, you're saying that they have full control, like their mind can command their body to do what they
Yeah.
want. So
Yeah. So they would just kind of start doing backflips, right? Okay.
now it makes it sound silly. I was
no,
trying
no.
to be a serious.
No. The only reason I'm not making fun of it. I'm trying to, because I've never thought of it from that angle. Because remember last week we learned that in heaven,
Right.
as soon as the mind wants the body to move, it would move, right? Because it had total control over it,
Right.
the impassibility, the subtlety, going through walls, and all that kind of stuff,
I guess
right?
what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
is before the fall, and we're talking about what the state of grace that they're kind of in, they
Yeah.
would they have that ability to do something like that? Were they in prime condition in all ways? Kind of like how we will be in heaven.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
kind of what I'm thinking at.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. That's
okay.
I mean, I know
Just
it's a good
curious.
question. It's a good question.
I stumped Dave.
I'm
Sorry.
thinking of like Simone Biles doing backflips, and I was like, oh, okay, because she.
I'm just thinking that they will just like to turn
Yeah.
out some flips.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's just
Sorry.
say, yeah. No. That's all right. That's all right. I appreciate it because you're probably thinking of things that people viewing right now are thinking about, and if I'm making fun of your questions, then they're like, I'm not going to put anything on those chats because he's going to make fun of me as well. But I honestly don't know. I think it's a good question. All right, so let me move on. It says, okay, it is clear that such a subjection of the body to the soul and of the lower powers to reason was not from nature. Otherwise, it would have remained after sin, since even in the demons, the natural gifts remained after sin. Hence, it is clear that also the primitive subjection by virtue of which reason was subject to God was not a merely natural gift, but a supernatural endowment of grace, for it is not possible that the effect should be of a greater efficiency than the cause. All right, so they were able to lose this because it's obvious that after the fall, they lost it. Okay, so this is what Thomas is saying here, is that this was a special gift that was given to them that they lost. Okay, so it wasn't something they had naturally, it was something given by God. All right, let us know if this is making sense to you. I promise I won't make fun of you. Okay, I learned my lesson about the backflips. Okay, I promise I won't make fun of you. 'Cause I'm sifting through this stuff myself. You notice how Jonathan's being very quiet ever since I mocked the backflips comment?
He probably
John-
was about to ask that same exact question.
Actually,
right?
I was. It was about like instruments though.
Oh, could you magically just
Yeah,
play
kinda
any
just, like, get a
instrument?
guitar and be
See,
like,
question that average person.
All right. So, Augustine says that as soon as they disobeyed the divine command and forfeited divine grace, they were ashamed of their nakedness, for they felt the impulse of disobedience in the flesh as though it were a punishment corresponding to their own disobedience. Hence, if the loss of grace dissolved the obedience of the flesh to the soul, they may gather that the inferior powers were subjected to the soul through the grace existing therein. Let me just mention that the reason why we suffer a lot of unhappiness and sorrow and despair is because of our fallen state. Okay, as we're going to learn in a moment, they would have never been depressed. They would have never been sad. They would have never been sorrowful. For what reason? Well, we'll explain it. Okay, and the reason we get sad is because there is disorder even among our very person, because our bodies are rebelling against our rational mind, and we want to eat too much pizza, and we want to sleep too much, and our sexual desires can get out of line, and they didn't have that. Okay, so that's one of the things that was unique about Adam and Eve. All right, so let us know what you're thinking. Is this making sense to you? All right, let's move on to the next thing. And I want to get the panel here amongst us. Okay, did Adam and Eve have all the virtues?
Oh.
Okay, so now,
Okay.
so now this
That's
is
interesting.
okay. Did they have all the virtues? What do you think? Jonathan is getting so quiet here. I'm
gonna
wondering
say
about
yes.
him.
I'm gonna say
Okay, you
yes.
think they had all the virtues, every single one of them?
Well,
Okay.
okay.
Can we list all the virtues? Are you talking about like the cardinal virtues or all? all?
The moral virtues,
Okay.
the theological virtues,
virtues.
the cardinal virtues, which I think, by the way, I think everybody should commit those to memory. At least the theological virtues are easy,
Sure,
faith, hope, and
yeah.
love. But the cardinal virtues, but there's a lot of moral virtues, intellectual virtues like science and wisdom and knowledge and understanding and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So Jonathan says yes. I'm going to say no, just to be contrary.
Yeah.
But also, I'm thinking that if they were able to fall into sin, maybe they didn't have.
I'd say they
didn't
have
have
like
fortitude.
99%
Maybe
of
fortitude
Okay.
may have been lacking.
All
I
right.
don't know. Buddy commented, by the way, on Facebook saying nothing corrupted can be in the presence of God, and Adam and Eve would have had no faults because they walked with God. Correct?
Yeah.
that right?
And he actually is anticipating something we're going to get to. So, wow, this Buddy's bright.
He
I'm
is.
glad you're with us, Buddy. And I'm sorry for bringing up Buddy the Elf. Okay, I apologize. I'm glad you're still with us. All right, so this is kind of interesting here, okay? In the state of innocence, man in a certain sense possessed all the virtues. And this can be proved from what precedes. Such was the rectitude of the primitive state that reason was subject to God and the lower powers to reason. Now the virtues are nothing but those perfections whereby reason is directed to God, and the inferior powers regulated according to the dictate of reason. Wherefore, the rectitude of the primitive state required that man should, in a sense, possess every virtue. So Jonathan's right.
There we go.
Okay, Jonathan seems right, but Jonathan's kind of also not right. Okay.
So that means I'm kind of right
You're
too.
kind of right too.
Yes.
Okay.
But
so
I'm kind of more right than you are.
but listen, okay, this is kind of interesting, okay? It must, however, be noted that some virtues of their very nature do not involve imperfection, such as charity and justice, and these virtues did exist in the primitive state, absolutely both inhabited and act. But other virtues are of such a nature as to imply imperfection, either in their act or in the part of the matter. Now your reaction leads me to believe that actually makes sense to you. I mean, because it's heavy stuff. Does that actually make sense?
I think so. So we're basically, let me just kind of make sure I'm getting it right. So you're
Okay.
saying, because I need a lot of help, you're saying that, so some of the virtues just automatically you can have without the thought that there was sin, like that there was some a vice to it, I guess you could say.
Well, yeah. I mean, kind of
like that, but some are kind of almost a reaction to
something
sin,
negative.
to something negative.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
okay.
Exactly. Sissel, I am so impressed.
Can I graduate this class?
you are exempt for the rest of class. No, I'm kidding. If such imperfection be consistent with the perfection of the primitive state, such virtues necessarily exist in that state. Okay, as faith, which is of things not seen, and hope, which is of things not yet possessed, okay? Which is interesting because in heaven, we don't have faith and we don't have hope, right? We know that. Did we learn that last week? You don't have faith and you don't have hope in heaven because you don't need it, because you're in the presence of God.
Right.
You are experiencing God. You're seeing his essence. So you have no need. Jesus did not need faith and hope, right, while he walked the earth. Okay, that was one of the interesting things. For the perfection of that state did not extend to the vision of the divine essence. Okay, but if any virtue which implies imperfection incompatible with the perfection of the primitive state could exist in the state of a habit, but not as to the act. For instance, penance, which is the sorrow for sin committed. But if you haven't committed any sins,
Then what's the need for penance?
you can't have penance, right? Or mercy, which is sorrow for others' unhappiness. But since it was only in Adam and Eve, and they were both perfectly happy, you can't have any mercy and sorrow for somebody's unhappiness, because it's like if all of us were perfectly happy right now, there's no need for mercy, because what would there be merciful for, right? So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you actually were along the right track there, Sissel. I am so impressed.
Don't expect it to last.
Sorrow, guilt, and unhappiness are incompatible with the perfection of the primitive state, wherefore such perfections existed as habits in the first man, but not as to their acts. Okay, I'm going to take a little break now, and not a break, we're not going to break, but I want to give out the phone number again, and if you are watching us on the social media platforms and you would like to call in and actually have your voice on this first ever only social media Back to the Father, let us know what's on your mind, if this is making sense to you. 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. That's also the number to call if you want to get those tickets for the Fatima movie, okay? And Sissel is feeling really good about herself right now. She is just rocking it. Did you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to say that Buddy is not offended that you compared him to Buddy the Elf. You are very lucky, Dave.
Is Buddy the only one that's commented so far?
We've had Celeste earlier, but I don't think we've had anyone else.
Celeste is
recently.
like, I'm out of here. Now, this one may surprise you as we move along here. We're talking about Adam and Eve and what they were like before the fall. Did they know all things? Okay. Did they know everything? What do you think? Jonathan?
Yes.
He was just saying, Jonathan, yes, I'm here, or Jonathan, yes, I do think
Jonathan,
they do.
the man
both
of
of
the
those,
the
yes.
man of the curt answer. Okay, so they knew everything. They knew.
Well, no, actually, because they didn't know the difference between good and evil, right?
They didn't know the difference between good and evil because that was in the tree, right?
Yeah.
But that's what they sought. They wanted to
Yeah,
know, right? So, by the way, this has to do with epistemology, the study of knowledge, and a big part of the Summa is what we're able to know, what we can't know, what do we know versus what angels know, and that kind of stuff. And what you're going to find is that by knowing the different natures of things, like the angelic nature, dog nature, human nature, okay, our nature before the fall, right now, and what our nature is going to be like when we're in heaven, and how that differs. It's all very interesting. And I know it's deep, but somebody's got to talk about it, right? And that's why we talk about this stuff here on Back to the Father. Okay, so what he's basically going to say here. And let me read this paragraph. In the natural order, perfection comes before imperfection, as act precedes potentiality. For whatever is in potentiality is made actual only by something actual. What he's going to get, let me paraphrase this. What he's going to get at here is that God created man perfect, right? And he created him perfect in body, so he could do those backflips that Sissel was talking about earlier. But he also created him so that he could perfectly teach his offspring. And in order to perfectly teach, you have to have perfect knowledge. And so hence, as the first man was produced in his perfect state as regards his body for the work of generation, so also was his soul established in a perfect state to instruct and govern others. All right, so what does that mean? Now, no one can instruct others unless he has knowledge. And so the first man was established by God in such a manner as to have knowledge of all those things for which man has a natural aptitude. All right, so what are those things that we have a natural aptitude to? Do we have a natural aptitude to learn calculus or trigonometry or geometry?
I don't know if I wish that I did or didn't.
Well, yeah, we do. Or to memorize the capitals of all the states, or a natural aptitude to learn, whatever, geography or, things like that. And so what he's saying here is that Adam and Eve would have been created with all of that knowledge infused into them. Okay, as Jonathan said at the beginning of the program, like the angels. Okay, so they had infused knowledge. All right, isn't that interesting? And such are whatever are virtually contained in the first evident principles, that is, whatever truths man is naturally able to know. Moreover, in order to direct his own life and that of others, man needs to know not only those things which can be naturally known, but also things surpassing natural knowledge, because the life of man is directed to a supernatural end, just as it is necessary for us to know the truths of faith in order to direct our own lives. Wherefore, the first man was endowed with such a knowledge of these supernatural truths as was necessary for the direction of human life in that state. Okay, so he knew about heaven, he knew about hell, he knew like the kind of things that are among the divine law, right? That we have to learn from the church because they surpass our knowledge. Okay, yes, Sissy, you had a comment? Did somebody comment something?
No, I have a question.
you look very sheepish.
I just want to
Okay.
make sure. So what you're saying is that Adam and Eve had like the natural aptitude to learn all these things, but they didn't just have it all in their head. Does that make sense?
No. Now what it means is that because we have the aptitude.
We have the aptitude.
Yeah,
They did have the knowledge.
yeah. They had not
So
only
they did know geometry, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got
so
it.
they
Just
had
wanna make
the
sure.
everything that we have the potential to know. Like if I said to you, what are the capitals of every European country? Okay, you probably don't know those, but you have the aptitude to learn that, as do I. Or if I said, what are all the elements in the periodic chart? Okay, you have the aptitude to learn it, right? But you haven't learned it, and I haven't learned it, right? But you have the aptitude to. So it's pretty much everything, okay? But they had that infused in them.
Got it.
Why? Because they had a perfect nature, and so since the intellect is part of our nature, they had that in perfection, okay? All right, what are y'all thinking? Those of you who are watching this, is it confusing? And why does it all matter? Okay, because it's all going to hopefully make sense in the end. Okay, but that was a good question. I appreciate you asking that. Okay, the first man was endowed with such a knowledge of these supernatural truths as was necessary for the direction of human life in that state. But those things which cannot be known by merely human effort and which are not necessary for the direction of human life were not known by the first man, such as the thoughts of men, future contingent events, and some individual facts, such as the numbers of pebbles in a stream and the like, okay? Right, so things that it would be pretty much impossible to count, the sands and the seashore and irrelevant things like that, right? So let's take a little break. And anybody have any questions, thoughts, confusing things that need to be worked out? People watching at home, other than so thankful for Buddy there in Houston.
Yeah, he says he's having his own private class.
Yeah, right.
We're doing tutoring.
Yeah. There's been discussion about having a certificate of the Summa through this. And so nobody on YouTube has commented yet. Got a few people that are watching, other than Buddy and Celeste on Facebook. But let us know what you think and make comments on that if you want. So, all right, are you thoroughly and utterly confused, or do you want to move on? This one's actually a little bit easier. This next
I thought you were
question.
saying what we just did was easier than what was coming, and I was like, oh no.
No, it gets a little bit easier now. Okay, it gets easier now. All right, so did passions exist in the soul of the first man? Now, this has to do with your cockroach question about what are the passions? Anger and frustration and joy and hope and despair and excitement and that kind of thing. So what do you think? Do you think the first man and woman in their original state of justice, in their original state of rectitude, did they have passions? And what do you think? And why does it matter?
I think they did.
Yeah? Okay. All passions? So could they
Maybe not.
Could they get sad and
Not all passions, but I mean they could be joyful. I mean,
yeah, okay.
Like maybe like the positive passions. That makes sense.
You're actually exactly right.
Man, I'm coming back for my backflip comment.
You could have written this thing. My goodness. Yeah. So all right. So
St. Thomas and I are tight.
I've got on the screen here some of the passions like fear and anger, hope, joy, despair, some of the pictures that would be represented by these. And so listen to what he says. I find this really interesting. The passions of the soul are in the sensual appetite, the object of which is good and evil. Wherefore, some passions of the soul are directed to what is good, as love and joy, others to what is evil, as fear and sorrow. And since in the primitive state, evil was neither present nor imminent, nor was any good wanting, which a good will could desire to have. Therefore, Adam had no passion which with evil as its object, such as fear, sorrow, and the like. Neither had he passions in respect of good not possessed, but to be possessed then is a burning concupiscence. But those passions which regard present good as joy and love, or which regard future good, he had at the proper time as desire and hope, existed in the state of innocence. Otherwise, however, than they exist in ourselves. For our sensual appetite, wherein the passions reside, is not entirely subject to reason. So think about that. If there would have never been an opportunity for him to despair or feel sorrow or anger, because he was in a state of perfect happiness, and he wouldn't allow that to happen, because nobody wants to feel sorrow, nobody wants to feel despair. That's all because of our fallen nature. Okay, that's what happened when Adam and Eve sinned, is he lost that. And all of a sudden after sin, that's when he felt his nakedness, he felt abandoned from God, but all that didn't exist beforehand, right? At other times, they follow reason's judgment accordingly as the sensual appetite obeys reason to some extent. But in the state of innocence, the inferior appetite was wholly subject to reason, so that in that state, the passions of the soul existed only as consequent upon the judgment of reason. How cool it would be if we had this original state of justice, this original state of rectitude, where we would not be falling into sin, and we would not be, oversleeping and eating too much and drinking too much, and tempted in so many different ways, because we'd have perfect rectitude like they had. So when they sinned, they blew it for everybody. Okay, because everybody would have had that. We would have lived eternally. There wouldn't be any death. There wouldn't be any sorrow or pain or anger or anything like that. Thank you, Adam and Eve, for that, for eating that apple, right? All right.
Hope it was a good apple.
I hope it was worth it. All right, so this is actually the last one that we're going to do. And this is where it ties in a lot to us here and now. It says, whether the first man saw God through his essence. And do you remember, I don't know if we covered this exactly on one of the shows, but when we talk about how Thomas describes the heavenly experience, beatitude, what it's like, do you remember, I think I mentioned it one time.
Yes.
And it's kind of confusing, but it's basically that the divine essence becomes the form of the human intellect. Okay, so we actually unite with God, and there's a divine union, which God isn't just like there and showering His grace upon us, but there's actually a union with God in heaven, which is like amazing, right? So basically, Thomas is asking here: is that what Adam and Eve had? Were they like seeing God through God's essence? Were they united with Him? Any thoughts? So you're like 3 for 3 here.
Yeah,
You're hitting all of it. You've silenced Jonathan, and so the fact that
Jonathan.
Okay, so I don't think there were, because I know that the angels weren't when they were first created, and then they had the choice. So I feel like they wouldn't have been able to sin if they were completely united with Him.
exactly, Jonathan. You exactly nailed it.
I'm just
right.
like I'm sending.
Hey, he
him
is
psychic
taking.
links, That was
you're
what I was
like
gonna
an
say.
angel sending thoughts
I
to
was.
intellectually, right?
Exactly.
No, really, no. That's exactly right. Because what Thomas is going to say here is that if they saw God through God's essence, they would have been experiencing the beatific vision, and nobody that experiences the beatific vision can sin, because when you are united with God, you won't sin, because you're so united to perfection and goodness in God's very essence that it would be impossible for you to sin. Okay, I got some pictures up here of Adam and Eve and the angel and the human being, and also the separated soul, which is kind of hard to depict in an image, and then also us when we die, and if we are blessed enough to experience the beatific vision, and then everything's going to be very different. So let's go through this. And by the way, if you're listening and you want to call in and ask a question on the show, we do take phone calls. Diane is standing by. Okay, 877-757-9424. And don't forget also that if you are in the DFW area, or if you are in Houston and you want to go see the Fatima movie next week at the theater, at an AMC theater, email me or call in, and we will send you a certificate to go and see that, okay? All right, so did the first man see God through his essence? Here is what Thomas says, the last article we're going to go over today, okay? The first man did not see God through his essence if we consider the ordinary state of that life, unless perhaps it be said that he saw God in a vision when God cast a deep sleep upon Adam. The reason is because, as Jonathan has already said, since in the divine essence is beatitude itself, the intellect of a man who sees the divine essence has the same relation to God as a man has to beatitude. Now it is clear that man cannot willingly be turned away from beatitude, since naturally and necessarily he desires it and shuns unhappiness. Wherefore, no one who sees the essence of God can willingly turn away from God, which means to sin. Hence, all who see God through his essence are so firmly established in the love of God that for eternity they can never sin. Therefore, as Adam did sin, it is clear that he did not see God through his essence. Otherwise, Jonathan's answer. Okay.
I like Jonathan's answer.
I know. I like how Jonathan explained it better than maybe Jonathan's going to be a future doctor of the church, like St. Thomas Aquinas.
It's a
Okay,
pretty,
but
he has the name for it, you know.
Saint Jonathan von Weber Hansberg, right?
Doctor.
All right. So last paragraph, and then we are going to discuss it for the rest of the program. And any comments that want to come through, or calls as well, we'd love to hear from you. Okay, so this is a little bit chunky here, but let's go through this because this is how it applies to us and our life now. Nevertheless, he knew God with a more perfect knowledge than we do now. Okay, so Adam and Eve knew God better than we know him now. Thus, in a sense, his knowledge was midway between our knowledge in the present state and the knowledge we shall have in heaven, when we shall see God through his essence. To make this clear, we must consider that the vision of God through his essence is contradistinguished, there's a big word, from the vision of God through his creatures. Now, the higher the creature is, and the more like it is to God, the more clearly is God seen in it. For instance, a man is seen more clearly through a mirror in which his image is the more clearly expressed. Thus, God is seen in a much more perfect manner through his intelligible effects than through those which are only sensible or corporeal. All right, so now let me just pause here. And he basically is saying that Adam and Eve saw the essence of God clearer than we do now, but not as clear as we will in heaven. Okay, so Adam and Eve are kind of in a midway point in their original state. Okay, does that make sense? Where they didn't have the beatific vision, but it was like as close as they possibly could have. I think it would be similar to Mary, although Mary did not sin and Jesus could not sin, right? Adam and Eve obviously could sin, so it wasn't exactly like Mary's situation. All right, so let me finish this up, and then we will have a robust discussion here. Okay, thus God is seen in a much more perfect manner through his intelligible effects than through those which are only sensible or corporeal. But in his present state, man is impeded as regards the full and clear consideration of intelligible creatures because he is distracted by and occupied with sensible things. Okay? And man was made right by God in this sense, that in him the lower powers were subjected to the higher, and the higher nature was made so as not to be impeded by the lower. Wherefore, the first man was not impeded by exterior things from a clear and steady contemplation of the intelligible effects which he perceived by the radiation of the first truth, whether by a natural or a gratuitous knowledge. Okay, I know that seems very, really, really deep, okay? Here's the thing that he's saying. We, in our present state, worry about our next meal. We worry about going to bed. We worry about, all these distractions. And it takes us away from the contemplation of spiritual things, right? But Adam and Eve didn't have that. Since they didn't worry about overeating, they didn't have concupiscence, they didn't have temptation to sin in the flesh, they didn't have lust, they didn't have gluttony, any of these things. It opened up the potential for them to contemplate God in a higher way. Okay, does that make sense? So what does this mean for us? Well, we also at least to acknowledge the fact that we're distractible creatures, and the less distracted we are by all the things in the world, the better we're going to be able to concentrate on higher things like God. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. I have totally lost you guys. You're just like totally lost. All right, so may have totally lost our audience as well. But if you are there and you want to comment, let us hear from you on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. And so you can let me know if this makes sense. Why does it matter that what Adam and Eve were like were before the fall? Why does it matter that they had immortality, or that they had complete integrity between their mind and their passions, that they had the knowledge of all things? Okay, it was actually a pretty cool situation to be in. I mean, it's pretty neat. But all that was lost with the fall. Okay, original sin came in, and everything was completely lost. So the last thing here, hence Augustine says that perhaps God used to speak to the first man as he speaks to the angels by shedding on his mind a ray of the unchangeable truth, yet without bestowing on him the experience of which the angels are capable in the participation of the divine essence. Therefore, through these intelligible effects of God, man knew God then more clearly than we know him now. All right, so, and there's our dog, our tulip, and our person one more time, okay? All right,
One
so
of these things is not like the other.
all right, so maybe this is explains why people don't spend much time thinking about Adam and Eve in the original state. It's pretty heavy stuff. It's pretty deep, but if you want to just kind of totally boil it down to the simplest form, it's that they had a greater ability to know God and to be in union with God because they weren't fettered with all of the concupiscence and the temptations and the sin and all the stuff that really makes this life difficult. That's why in the Memorare we call it the Valley of Tears, right? The Valley of Tears is what we're going through right now. It's difficult, but having an understanding of what it used to be like helps us understand a little bit more what it will be like if we get to heaven, okay? And I think perhaps what's missing very much in our culture today is just a genuine desire to get to heaven. Because if you genuinely desire to get to heaven, you're going to try the very best you can to avoid all sin. You're going to get to confession as often as possible. You're going to take advantage of indulgences. You're going to follow Holy Mother Church as best as humanly possible. And so, all right, so that is the lesson. And again, if you grasped a little bit of that, and if, this weekend you're like, you know what, I'm going to think a little bit more about Adam and Eve, because really all we really think about generally is that they ate the apple. Original sin came into the world, and things are different now. Things are harder now. But I bet a lot of that maybe people don't even think about.
No.
Okay,
True.
the virtues, the knowledge, that kind of stuff. Any thoughts, any comments?
Well, Buddy on Facebook asked the question of what would Adam and Eve have seen if not the Holy Trinity, since God is the Trinity and cannot be separated?
What would they have seen
Like,
if
what would
not
they-
the Holy Trinity?
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know what he means by seeing the Trinity. I mean, you can see God in the essence, but like, do you understand what he means by
we're talking
that?
about,
Or
so Adam and Eve were in the garden and God would come down. Like, so what did they see? I guess is what he's kind of getting at.
yeah, well, they had eyes, so they could see what was in the garden. They could see like you and I were seeing, physically. But as far as their knowledge of, like the essence of God, they would have known God in a more perfect way than we do, but not as well as we would know in heaven. Okay, I know. I hope I'm probably not answering that as well, but
So do you think Adam and Eve were aware of the Trinity? I guess maybe if that's that
okay.
God is three persons.
That God was three persons.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. That's a great question. I wonder
I
if
think that's what kind of Buddy's hinting at, and I want to
yeah,
make sure we try
would they have known that God was a Trinity? Well, I would say yes, based on what we said a moment ago, is that supernatural truths were given to them, okay? So the things that we learned through the church, and we would never know that God is a Trinity if it wasn't for Holy Mother Church, okay? No, none of us would dream this up. None of us would just be born and say, you know what, I bet there's, three persons in one God. We'd never think of that. So I would say, based on what we've already read, that would have been infused knowledge. That's supernatural. It's not natural knowledge. But I would say yes, they certainly would have. But they would have lost the ability to know that after the fall. So their descendants after the fall would not have naturally known that, because it has to be taught supernaturally, unless it's just like infused like the angels. So anyways, good question. Thank you, Buddy. Buddy is definitely, we need to have like an award for the...
We could do a weekly award of who's the best.
The
top
top
commenter.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a real challenge today to pick, since since Buddy has been so awesome. So, now I see Adrian has
Yes, I just saw
chimed in.
that.
Oh my gosh, Adrian has done 6 messages.
He's trying to win that award, Dave.
Right. Sorry, Adrian. No, they haven't made a movie, Adrian the Elf, yet. So you're out of luck, buddy. But do you want to read some of Adrian's comments?
Yeah, let's see. He goes. He's saying, I think, to Buddy's question, he goes, I guess no, because wouldn't that have been passed down to their children?
It would have been passed down to the children.
You might be answering another question.
Let me go. You don't have to go to the screen here, but Jonathan, but I'm just going to see if I can find that. Okay, because it's really what the question about would they know all things, okay? And he says the first man was endowed with such a knowledge of these supernatural truths as was necessary for the direction of human life in that state. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to respectfully. I guess I'll disagree with Adrian. So he thinks they would have.
I'm not sure if that's what he was responding to because he wrote a bunch of comments at once. But
Okay.
he can correct us if we're
Yeah,
wrong.
Adrian went like on a comment spree, didn't he? I think he's trying to get the award. All right, we're gonna have an award, and we're gonna send something to the most prolific commentator of the program. And have we made the decision that it's Buddy? I mean,
yes.
yeah,
Yes,
Adrian's
100%.
like the also
Sorry,
ran.
Adrian.
He's number 2. But no, we do appreciate Buddy's comments. Celeste, thanks. I think we lost Celeste. I think she was. I think in the first 10 minutes, she was like, "I am out of here." But we do appreciate her being on as well. Okay, any other comments? Let me see what else Adrian has in mind, because Adrian, as I've said before, for those who are watching this either as a recording, he's a producer of Catholic Drive Time and really bright. He at one point was in seminary to be a Dominican priest and then discerned out of that, but very, very bright. And so... all right, so we are going to wrap things up. 4 minutes. Any other comments or questions or thoughts? If you knew 2% about Adam and Eve before the show, do you know 3% now? Did it move the needle at all, or does it make a little bit of sense?
I think I'm about like 0.75 more than I knew when I was checking.
I actually do have a quick question.
Okay.
It's not exactly related to what we're talking about, but it is Adam and Eve. So you said that you don't think that we would be eating in glory once we get our glorified bodies.
Thomas said that.
Well, Thomas said that. But Adam and Eve did eat the apple, and God said that they could eat all the fruit except for the apple. So they still ate.
Now, I think what Thomas said is that we don't have to eat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not necessary to eat.
So you just
And so, and I think, and again, I don't want to fall into heresy here because that's Jonathan's role, but I think that okay, and I think there was an actual apple. There was obviously actually Adam and Eve. Some people think, oh, it's a figurative story, but I think it's closer to reality to say that actually happened, and that was a real story, and there really was a serpent there. The devil was there. But I think that would be the answer, is that their body doesn't require eating, just like it doesn't require, sexual union to create new creatures in heaven. So we don't have to drink, we don't have to eat, we don't have to sleep, because our bodies are perfected. I mean, because eating is a weakness, right? It's not something that, it's something that we just have to do because of the fall, right?
Gotcha.
All right. So anything else? Good question, though.
Dave, can I put you on the hot seat instead of Jonathan and I for once?
Oh yeah.
I
yeah.
looked up a list of St. Thomas Aquinas facts.
No.
I was just gonna see if you know the answer to some of them.
All right.
It's just like one or two.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe we can do this
please,
every week.
please.
So
Okay.
Jonathan and I can turn the tables.
Yeah,
right?
turn the tables. I think it's fair game. Yes.
What was he had a lifelong? What did he have a lifelong fear of?
Lightning.
Dave, you were supposed to know that.
You gotta.
Oh, yeah, I got one.
Yeah. Okay, so that's right, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he said fear of storms, but it's
Okay.
because he believes, his sister.
All right. So you
Yeah.
got to wake up early in the morning to fool me, Sissel. All right. We didn't plan this. So, all right. So you have a trivia question?
Yeah,
John,
so-
you guys planned this, didn't you?
We didn't actually.
No,
But
okay.
we're psychically linked, Dave.
All right.
So what did meek and humble Thomas do to when his brother sent the woman into his room when he was locked in the tower?
He grabbed a brand out of the fire and he chased her out. And it was said at that moment that he was given the virtue of purity and chastity. which ties in so well. Let me go an extra minute, okay?
come
No, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
We're
yeah.
annoyed
Come
now.
on, these are easy questions. You guys are asking me easy questions.
both
Yeah, next week is going to be more challenging.
Oh, yes.
But you see, the thing is, how does that tie into all this? Is that it was like Thomas was given almost what Adam and Eve had. Okay, he was given, at least tradition tells us, the like so that he didn't suffer from sexual lust. Why? Because if he is going to be asked to write the Summa Theologia by God, it's a distraction. And the fewer distractions we have, the more we can focus on God, which is exactly the point he's making about Adam and Eve. They had a much better capability to contemplate God because they weren't constantly tempted by lust and gluttony and overindulgence of all these things and sleep and all that kind of thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, Jonathan. Thank you. All right. I know this was kind of deep. Diane has the hard job and the easy job. She doesn't get put in the hot spot, but she also has to handle all the calls coming in. No, I'm being facetious. But
Adrian says he's going to help us look up for questions next week for you, Dave. So we're going to come at you with bigger guns. Okay?
All right. Thanks again. Don't forget about Catholic Drive Time, 6 o'clock Central Time, every Monday through Friday. And you can hear Joe and Adrian and Emily. How much longer does Emily have
I think
on the
it's
show?
the 14th of May or something
On
like
the
that.
14th?
Yeah, so it's not
Okay.
too much longer, another week or so.
Okay, yeah, next Thursday is Feast of Our Lady of Fatima, so the next day would be the 14th. And thank you to Sissel and thank you to Jonathan. This is not easy. I mean, to try to get this stuff. We'll pick a new topic next week, and if you're watching the recording of this, or if you're watching it live and you have any questions or comments, you want to get on our email list, please email me, Dave Palmer at grnonline.com. And thank you very much for participating. Thanks to Diane. Thanks, Sissel. Thanks, Jonathan. You guys did well today. You're like star students. You and Buddy.
Yes, we are. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next week. God bless you.
Thanks for joining us for Back to the Father. And don't forget, the glory of God is the human person fully alive. If you have comments about the show, email Dave Palmer at grnonline.com.